Okay, so even before me, my parents met each other actually coaching against each other in the Bay Area. They were both athletic directors at private high schools. My dad in San Francisco, my mom in Hillsborough, California. And they were at rival schools, and they met coaching basketball and volleyball against each other. So from then on, I was pretty much born and raised in a gym. I think primarily more basketball growing up, basketball, baseball. But through those years in Northern California, I was still too young. I moved back to Pennsylvania when I was 12, entering seventh grade, and in Pennsylvania, the small town had middle school boys volleyball. So I kind of picked it up, and obviously my parents, growing up in the gym, I was doing lines at 8 and 9 years old for high school matches, and all the other coaches always loved when I did it because I took it so seriously. So I was just exposed and saw decent level volleyball from a very young age. I think one of my favorite things to do after dinner, even growing up when I was that age, was to go play pepper in the front yard with my dad. And I just loved him challenging me and beating balls at me. So I was always trying to find a way, and I was always touching a ball. Through middle school and high school, I played basketball, baseball, and volleyball. And I just fell in love with the sport of volleyball because I think it's so... It's strategic in a way, but also it's always something new. You don't get the repetitive, fastball, not to knock on baseball, but there's so much movement throughout any sort of rally that, the only thing that you're in sole control of is, your serve from the service line, but everything else is dictated by something preceding. So I enjoyed the challenge of that. Through college, found some success. I think my biggest thing in terms of being recruited was I wanted to be on the court right away. I didn't want to sit on the bench. I had never sat on a bench, and I wanted to compete at the highest level I could. And ending up at junior high college was a blessing. I played, 2 years there, and actually after my sophomore year, was getting a lot of buzz of, that I was very good. And I never really thought of myself as very good. So I actually got a release and wanted to see what would be the best thing for my professional or career after college to go play. And I took some trips to UC Irvine and Long Beach State and had some decent scholarship offers and turned them both down because I was so happy at the school that I was at. And took the next 2 years. And I think my junior year, that was the one of 4 years we didn't win a national championship. But it was fun to try to build off that and then see the guys grow of what we need to do the following year to get better, because there was a lot. I think we returned 5 of the 7 starters going in, and the fact that we could come back the following year and win a national championship was great. After that, I wanted to pursue the professional career. I moved out to Southern California, trained with a men's national team where everyone from the 2008 Olympic team was in the gym except for Lloyd Ball. So you have Clay Stanley, Reed Priddy, Riley Salmon, Rich Lamborn, all of those guys were in the gym. So to be I was 21 at the time, in with a bunch of grown men. And, even I remember this very vividly was Riley Salmon was in the middle of a drill, and I was standing off the court, doing lines and kind of paying my dues within the program. His little daughter was at practice because they didn't have a babysitter that day, and he had to step out of the drill to go take his daughter to the bathroom. At that point, I knew that I'm 21 years old with these fathers and husbands and all that stuff, that I needed to really kind of grow up.
Yeah.
And that was something that was definitely very eye-opening to me. And it's a moment I'll never forget, that I'm here, doing the sport that I love and, wanting to compete. And here these guys are making a living, supporting their family, still doing what they love. So how do I find a way to do that? And luckily, being with the national team opened up some doors coaching. Coaching club at Orange County Riptides at the time, which is not in existence anymore. The owner took me under her wing, put me with a couple different teams and some great coaches, and I fell in love with coaching. So from then on, it was how do I stay involved in the sport while I'm still trying to pursue a professional career. Once I got cut from the national team, I had an opportunity to come to Arizona to work on my graduate degree and still coach. And the coach at the time I was close with, he coached me at Juniata for 3 years. He allowed me to take a professional contract in the fall in Puerto Rico while I was still a graduate assistant for the program here. And that was a good experience. It wasn't really what I had expected. I'm a family guy. It was tough to be away from family and friends for the holidays, and it's a lifestyle choice. And I know some people are great with it and other people struggle with it. And I just fell in love with kind of being home and coaching and still being involved in the sport. And luckily I've had some doors open for me, and timing has been good, and I absolutely love where I am, and I think I have the best job in the world.
Yeah. So talk about Alan as a coach.
He's a very, very stern mellow mannered, but you know that when you're in the gym with some of those gold medal achievers, he was just kind of putting some stuff on the board and kind of doing some strategic things. Guys like Tom Hoff, Riley Salmon, all those other guys that were in the gym were really the ones that you push and want to work like. I remember that Tom Hoff, who was, oh my gosh, probably late 30s at the time, he was the most intense pepper player I have ever seen. And playing pepper with him was harder than practice was at that point.
Really?
So, one of the drills obviously you saw this morning was you're doing pepper as hard as you can for, 5-10 minutes, depending on what it is, but you're working a sweat up even before the practice starts. So those guys kind of knew what they were doing. They had some serious standards. And obviously, Reed Pretty, a guy that's been undersized and challenged and from the state of Arizona, he's the hardest working guy in the gym. He's not taking plays off. Those guys don't take plays off. So that was Alan Knipe. I can't say enough good things about him, obviously, with what Long Beach State is doing. He's a great coach and a good recruiter, and definitely has a good game plan and a great reputation for himself.
Yeah. What other coaches along the way kind of helped form you where you're at? Obviously, Juniata coach.
Yeah, so actually Jeremy did not recruit me to Juniata. Ken Shibuya did.
Okay.
So Ken, there was something about Ken's demeanor, and I had opportunities to go walk on at Penn State and walk on a number of different places, but I wanted to be on the court. And what Ken did, I remember one night in the winter of my senior year, he drove 3 hours one way to come watch me play a high school basketball game, and then drove 3 hours back to campus after the match. And for him to do something like that, and just to kind of be there and support whatever I am doing, showed something to me that it's a guy that I want to be around. And he wasn't much of a screamer. I'm not much of a screamer. I think I'm more stern in things. Guys might tell me differently, but I loved playing for Ken, and he definitely opened my eyes up to a bunch of different ways to see the game. And he's the associate head at Stanford now, so we'll see him next week. And he's somebody that even before our matches, when we're playing each other, we'll go grab a cup of coffee before our match, and I pick his brain. When we go recruit and we're at the same tournament, we'll have lunch, and I just love to pick his brain and bounce ideas, and he always listens and kind of lets me talk through things. He's kind of like a therapist in a way, but a volleyball therapist. Another guy is also, I worked camps for Russ Rose through my college career, and he was a guy that I loved being around. He is somebody that I respect a ton. Definitely a different style of coaching than Ken had. So it was nice to kind of see two different sides of things and how they work, and how you can kind of piece together your own, I guess, presentation to the players, and kind of see what kind of person and coach you want to be and what works and what doesn't work. But nowadays, I think my biggest thing is I try to be so situational and individualized with, I coach one guy one way, I coach the guy in the same position, that's a different guy a different way, because that's what he needs. So trying to find those ways to motivate these guys is definitely the most challenging, being that we're so young right now.
Yeah. $75% underclassmen, and you graduate, I think you said 9 seniors and stuff. So you're going from, it's like a total roller coaster for you at the moment, isn't it? A little bit.
Yeah, it is. And I knew this year, and if you look at our schedule, this is the toughest schedule we've ever faced. And I knew that going in, that we would have the talent to compete with some of the best teams in the country. I think even our first match against Long Beach State, the scores were 18, 19, 20, or something along those lines, that we were getting there and competing and challenging them. But right now, it's just a lot of the mindset going in. We've had a couple injuries along the way, youthful mistakes, and I think a lot of our errors right now are just coming at the wrong time. So trying to train the whole timing and what I need to do in certain situations is really kind of where we're going. But in regards to talent, like, this is some of the most physical and talented group of guys that we've ever had in the gym. I think the amount of character, this is the first year that nobody's gotten in trouble on campus. Our grades for the fall semester, we had a 3.5 GPA for the fall semester. So we have all of the nice guys doing the right things off the court. How do we get them to buy in and do the mindset things on the court and volleyball related homework assignments? But yeah, it's been challenging, but I wanted to challenge these guys and let them see that we can compete, and that we need to be able to believe that, hey, this is a national championship program, even though it doesn't show it right now on paper, that we have the ability to be there.
So how are your practices different last year than this year?
Last year the guys, I think our average age of our team last year was probably about 23 with all of those seniors. We played a lot more last year. There wasn't the fine tuning of the technical things because at that age they were going to have a tough time making those changes anyway, and they were running out of time to make the changes, take that step back before they can really boost themselves forward, because a lot of times that could take a year or two, and we didn't have that. So it was a lot of 6-on competition style. Also, the level of impact that we could put on their bodies was less last year because they were a bunch of old men. So we had to do tough things for a short period of time and probably release them a little bit early so they can go get some treatment.
Yeah.
This year, there's definitely been more of an emphasis on getting them to buy into what we're trying to do as a staff in terms of our strategy, philosophies, other things, and then hash out some of the technical things that we can with the young guys.
Yeah.
We're really emphasizing feedback this year because we are so new and trying to get, the relationships on the court with the guys next to you. We're just saying, hey, like, you need to give feedback, even if you know it's good. Remind them that it's good. If it's bad, be picky about it. Setters, you need to have some tough skin about the feedback that you might be getting from attackers.
Yeah.
Liberos, you guys have the most experience in service eve. Let's get you to really control our depths and what we're doing in terms of changing any sort of service eve kind of formations. So we're asking the guys, even these young guys, to grow and develop this tough skin early, because then we're just going to be able to demand more of each other in the future. So it's a blessing and a curse to be young.
Yeah,
definitely.
So it sounds like there's some autonomy in like what you're doing, although you're kind of giving them the reins a little bit and seeing what they do with it.
Yeah, the 4 upperclassmen that we have they're called our leadership panel, and each one of them luckily have a different personality than the guy next to them. So one guy's kind of the vocal leader, the other guy's the leader in the weight room, the other guy might be the leader out off the court of communicating. Okay. So we've kind of devised a little bit of a panel where they can use their strengths to lead this program. But I try to stay so far away from micromanaging guys, of telling them, hey, you need to eat this at this time, or I try to create as little resentment towards the staff as possible, while still trying to anger them in a sense that they want to get fired up and a little bit kind of testy.
Sure.
So walking that fine line, but still, like, since we're so young, it's so tough still trying to find where I can push those certain buttons. I want them to, GCU has a motto, university is still going to find your purpose. I want them to be able to do that without me dictating everything. So I try to let them grow into men and make their own decisions. I know they're going to struggle at times, and that's something that we as a staff definitely have to stomach and kind of battle through, but help them, guide them in a way, as opposed to just telling them what to do.
Yeah. Going back a few years when you first started, the culture of the program to now, what's changed, and in specifics, like what have you done differently? What, like, recruiting wise, what have you done differently?
Yeah, this is my fourth. I guess my first season was interim, and I was titled head coach about halfway through that season. But this is my fourth season, and I've had 8 assistants now. So taking the brunt of kind of continuity through everything has been tough, and it's been tasking. And Keith, my new assistant, has been great of alleviating a lot of the office work and whatnot that I've had to kind of do myself, because it's been tough, because I've known that the assistants were leaving sooner. So right. I just kind of, instead of training, it was just do it yourself, so then you don't waste your time training and then having to train somebody else. But even the culture, what you were asked about the culture was, I don't want to say they were bad kids. I just don't know if there was, I don't even know how to say it without knocking somebody. They were able to get away with a lot.
Okay.
Prior to me, and they kind of pushed the limits, and there wasn't a lot of repercussions for things. So it was kind of finding a way to, being a young coach, assert myself in a way that I am the guy that's running the show here. You're not going to like me at times, but you can't be acting like idiots. So I really stress the importance of character. Little things like, I actually stole this from women's basketball is, we don't wear headphones when we're walking through the airport because people want to engage in conversation. So this is just something to be a little bit more, I guess, inviting of conversation. Hey, what's GCU stand for? You guys play basketball? No, we're a volleyball team. So then that starts more conversation. I'm huge on pushing your chairs in, saying please and thank you, open your doors for people, because I think all of those minor details go so far. This is the best, nicest group of men. We've already had 3 dinners at players' parents' houses. It's a very, very cohesive unit. They get along very well, and I'm super proud of the young man that we have in each of them. Mm-hmm. So I think that's changed. The recruiting side of it, because there's been such a change from assistant to assistant to assistant, but also we've had the conference flip from the MIVA to the MPSF. So now we were spending a lot of time in the St. Louis, Chicago area. Now we're spending more time in San Diego, Orange County, LA, just because we go back to their homes. So it's easy to get a guy to leave home if we know that we're going to spend a lot of time back in that home area. So that's had a little change. We've got a couple of kids from Florida, and one extreme athlete that came from baseball, touches 12 feet. He's only 6'6", touches 12 feet. And then we have a setter that's got some time, most recently starting freshman. But then also we got these San Diego kids. We have a couple foreigners on our roster, just because I was late into the recruiting side initially. So those guys were good finds. Foreigners usually get picked up a little bit later. So kind of salvaging the roster, but still trying to grow a relationship with more clubs in the hot spots of LA and Orange County.
Yeah. So the culture part of it, though, it sounds like you definitely have a vision of what you want this program to be.
Very much so. I think it's important that, we talk effort. We want to be proud of what we do effort-wise, but also being so close in age to them. My wife and I talk about how our relationship could be something that they want to strive to be and how they should treat, their significant others. But just being good people, that's something that I really preach on a daily basis, and something that I definitely don't let go.
Yeah.
If they're acting like idiots, I will be harder on them than them not putting the effort in the gym.
Gotcha. You kind of brought it up a second ago, but you go from the MIVA to the MPSF. And I look back, 10 years ago, the MIVA was pretty much wasn't very tough, and then you guys are in there, and four straight national champions came out of there, or 3 or 4, I think.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And then you just decide, okay, we want to stay West Coast, travel less, and now you're in, again, the toughest division in men's volleyball.
Yeah.
By far, I think. So and you start off with Long Beach. I mean, your first 3 matches were against ranked teams, and you start off with the defending national champion. Again, is it a mindset thing for the coaching staff as well as the players? I mean, you're going from one to the other, or is it pretty much just?
Yeah, the MIVA to the MPSF flip. I know that if we were putting the same lineup and the same product out there this year, that we would probably be, maybe we're 10-4. Because we have some conference wins.
In the MIVA, you're talking about.
In the MIVA, in the MIVA, correct. Top to bottom. Definitely, look at Ohio State 3 years ago. They almost went undefeated and won a national championship easy, and now they're not even a top 15 program. I mean, things change. I think the way that men's volleyball is growing, it's growing slower, but the not so good teams are now good teams. The great teams are still great teams. So I think there's definitely more competition top to bottom, which leads right into the MPSF. I mean, the MPSF top to bottom, there is no night off, which in the MIVA, there's a couple easy matches that you're going to end and be able to cruise and kind of save some bodies. The MPSF is tough, and there's some programs in there with some amazing histories. And obviously this is our 10th year of a program. We don't have the history, and that's something that we're really fighting. I think history helps in recruiting, and that's says something about we got to work harder and get ourselves seen. And I think the success our last year in the MIVA helped us get a couple of these freshmen that are top 50 high school players in the country. Now we got to make sure that we push through this year, compete, put up something respectable. Next year, I know we're going to be better with more experience, and kind of get back to that recruiting of, hey, this program is good. Their win-loss column doesn't really represent it, but just trying to get more respect. I know a lot of programs don't respect us, and I think that has a lot to do with, a lot of turnover in our staff. I think the fluctuations of win and losses from year to year, but I'm hoping the last 3 years kind of show what we can do with some older guys with some experience.
So with a young team though, you've got, like you just said, you don't get a night off. You got Long Beach, you got UCLA, you got BYU. I mean, it's just every single night. We got Pepperdine coming in Friday, and then you got Stanford on the next. I mean, it just doesn't end, right?
Yeah.
So how do you work these guys into this without them getting intimidated? Like, what's your coaching philosophy there? Your coaching style there?
Yeah, I don't think. Like I said, we have a ton of talent. I don't think these guys are intimidated. I think in years past, we always struggled against Lewis. We had always struggled against Lewis, and I believe a lot of it had the doubt going into it of, hey, this is Lewis. We've always struggled, and now they're questioning. I don't think these guys question what we're doing. I don't think they're intimidated by the name on the uniform. But it's more of, like I said, we keep preaching effort, and I think belief. So we start to go down in a set, and that's when we're like, okay, this is happening again. I think winning is something that you learn to do, and this group of 19 guys right now hasn't really learned to win together. So teaching the thought process of, hey, like, what are we doing in these certain moments, and kind of being a little bit more nitpicky about the training and what are you seeing, more visual, what are you seeing, because like I said, we have the visual things, but our setters are young, which now with young attackers, that's not putting them in the best situations at times. So it's a lot of decision-based things. I think we're really hard on our setters. Obviously, me being one and my assistant being one, they get a lot of feedback. And we don't want them to overthink. We still want them to play and not micromanage what they're doing. But I really don't think our guys are intimidated. I just think that we're in a little bit of a slump right now against some of these bigger teams that might be a little more physical. We don't have the depth that we've had in years past. So just trying to find and get them to understand that we don't need one guy to beat this team. We need all 15 of us to travel, or whatever's on the bench. Like, we need all of you guys to bring it through practice throughout the week so that we're good and as good as we can be and as challenged as we can be leading up into, the one match we have.
Yeah.
But Pepperdine's got some extremely physical athletes and much more experience on the court than us, and we're definitely going to have to go out and we're going to have to scrap, and we're going to play as tough, gritty volleyball as we can.
Yeah. Is there coaches or programs in the MPSF that you look up to and think, wow, that's a roadmap for us? That would be someplace we want to go.
The team that we actually talk the most about, and we really try not to emulate other teams because we want to be ourselves.
Sure.
But we talk so much about what Long Beach does. They're so talented, but also the level of discipline that they have as rallies are going on and the way that they communicate to each other. Like, they're on the same page already, but that doesn't mean they're not still talking and communicating with each other. But if you watch what they do mid-rally, it's unbelievable how quickly and how urgent they get back to, their base defense, their base block. There's intention behind everything that they do, even with that they have all of the talent too. A lot of teams rely on their talent, or they rely on just trying to outsmart and outwork.
Yeah.
How do we get to be like the team that has all the talent that is still the hardest working team? Yeah. So I think Long Beach State is definitely somebody that we emulate right now. They have 5 or 6 starters that are seniors, which helps.
Yeah. For men's volleyball, and a lot of coaches don't spend a lot of time watching men's volleyball, and so the line, it's so thin. The difference between the USA team and the Serb, it's razor thin.
Sure.
I feel it, and so again, there's a difference to coaching that, and I think in women's volleyball, talent sort of rules the day. When you have 2 talented guys teams, I mean, what is the differences? I think back when Ohio State won, back to back, their serving was just unbelievable.
Sure.
It was unbelievable. And so every team probably has that gift or that, that knack that they have. But what is it about men's volleyball that's the separator?
I think at the college level, there can be a little separation. I think that has a lot to do. I mean, as much as it is serving and passing still on the women's side, I think serving and passing has a ton to do with it, because if you can be aggressive with your serve and take teams even relatively out of system, a triple block on the men's side in the college game is a lot better than just a single attacker out of system. I think that's something that we try to emphasize, of putting teams in bad positions. I think there's only a handful of great college setters on the men's side right now out there, maybe 5 or 6 setters that are great. But other than that, I mean, offenses are pretty predictable. It's just a matter of, can you dictate what they're going to do and make sure your guys understand. You know, we're being so young, we don't have that wherewithal on the court of still seeing everything. So there's a lot of things coming in from the bench about, you know, rotations, what they want to do, first priority, second priority, etc. But I still think serving is huge. I mean, Ohio State had great arms, you know, from the service line, but I mean, they were an average offensive team.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of people, like a lot of women's coaches hate men's volleyball because there's so many missed serves.
Yeah.
And that's one of the only ways to win sometimes.
Yeah. I mean, so that's tough as a coach though, right? I mean, that's for you. You're looking, you're going, oh, you know, I mean, do we go for it? So are you, when you're training, are you that coach that says, you know, yeah, we're just bang, just go? Or
we try to train the thought of, if it's 5-5 and, you know, you've gone back there and scored a couple points with your serve and you're going to hit that, you know, ace or air style serve, you better do that at 24-24. Whatever you bring early in that set better still be your mindset late.
Yeah.
And I think that has a lot to do with us not being the most physical team, but also that's what's going to give us the chance to maybe just put us over the top. And, you know, you're supposed to side out at 70-75% roughly anyway on the men's side if you really want to win. So, like, if you don't make that serve, go back inside the ball out. I mean, you're supposed to.
Right.
So I think that's something that put us over the top our last year in the MIVA is we had guys that were going back there during crunch time, down a point or whatever it is. You know, they're going back to serve 23-24. Like, they're going after it. You know, we get one every now and again.
Yeah.
But we definitely had to be aggressive. And I think we have more float servers this year than guys that can really go back. You know, talking about the one outside that we don't have this year, I mean, he's a heck of a jump server. And we're still trying to figure out what our personality and identity is. And, you know, this past weekend, we figured that we need some more arms on the court. So we probably are going to bring some more jump servers in and see what we can do.
Yeah.
So trying to kind of manipulate our personality into trying to find the most competitive, successful group of guys out there.
Yeah. You just said a few minutes ago that there's only a handful of really good setters out there at the collegiate level. Why is that?
Maybe that's just me being critical. You know, I don't know. I think I'm trying to think across the board of, you know, when, you know, I played back in the day and there were guys that, you know, I'm 6'5". You have Jonathan Winder that set at Pepperdine that was 6'9". Ryan Ammerman that was at Irvine that's 6'10". James Shaw at Stanford was 6'7". It seems like a lot of these setters now are a little bit smaller. The ones that are really good that run the offense, I think, very well. I don't know. I think it just kind of comes and goes. Maybe setters aren't being trained the same. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But definitely finding that right guy that just gets it, that plays with a chip on his shoulder. We got to find that guy, and then they'll kind of just learn to grow through it. I think that we have 3 very different setters in our gym, which is something that I like, because if something's not working at a given time, that we can go a different route. But also I don't like the revolving door of substitutions, and right now we're still trying to find it. So there's too many guys that are getting time on the court. We try to let them battle through and have a long leash early in the year, but at some point we still got to try to find a way to win. But yeah, tough one, sitter.
Yeah, good thing. You also, I heard you at the end of practice talking about this a little bit, that not really worried about results at the moment, but the process. And again, as a coach, and you're competitive and you want to win, and like you talked about this, you know, the more wins we get, the more recruits get, you know, we get looks, we get respect, and all that stuff.
Sure.
But how do you as a coach balance that? That's tough.
Yeah, you know, we actually had a speaker come in on Monday that was talking a lot about, you know, why are you here? Why do you play volleyball? And, you know, they're Division I athletes, so they should, the 2 reasons were, well, you better love the sport or else, you know, you're wasting your time, and you better want to win. So those were the 2 things, and it was kind of a backwards way of thinking of, well, now what am I going to do to get there, as opposed to just wanting the results of winning. So usually people say, you know, yeah, I want to win, you know, I want to do this and fine tune that, but it's more of like, you need to check your mind of like, hey, I'm here because I love to be here and I want to win, and try to create that competitiveness. You know, we also talked about having confidence and showing it too with our, I guess, nonverbals. And one of the things, if we're not winning matches and we're not showing it, how are we going to create that? And it's going to be with our practice reps in the gym, because if you're prepared for something, you should be confident in something. And I think that our practice gym has been pretty average lately, and I think that has a lot to do with why we're not getting the wins. But yeah, I mean, one of the things that I've said for years is when you leave the practice gym or whatever thing you're doing in life, if you leave the classroom, you leave a test, you need to be proud of what you tried to do. And if you're proud of that, the outcome, win or lose or pass or fail, you know that you at least gave your best effort. And that's something that I think can go a long way, because the outcome will come if you just make sure you do that day in and day out. So we always say, like, when you leave the practice gym, you better have your chin up and you better be proud of what you did. And if you're not, how are you going to change that?
And that's just part of the process. That's just part of the process. Just going through. I want to switch gears a second, because you had a couple of maybe the most interesting coaching years of all time. You're coaching junior college women at Mesa Community College,
Correct.
The women's team, recruiting for them, coaching the men, recruiting for them, and it was for 2 years, as I recall, correct? Or was it one year?
It was about a year and a half, two seasons.
Talk about, first of all, talk about what a day was for you during those days, and then also just like what you learned from that.
Yeah. So when we were in season, because I think that I was brought on.
Which we? So
Yeah,
when the men were in season, yeah.
So GCU brought me on as the interim late October. I think my first day might have been November 1, which luckily was at the very tail end of the Mesa season.
Right.
So at that point, leading in through the holidays, Mesa didn't have a ton going on, so I was able to really kind of devote my time to GCU. Also at that point, I was coaching boys club, and then also had girls club that was starting up through the holidays. So I actually had 4 coaching jobs at once. But some of the best advice that my brother gave me was, you need to work your butt off through your 20s. You need to grind, and they're going to be long days, but you need to do it. So then when you get into your 30s and you're trying to create a family, you're able to take a step back from certain things and give something up. And I still remind him of that, because that was a message that he told me, because I was exhausted. I would leave the house at 7 a.m., come to GCU, we'd practice from 8:30 to 11. Then the guys would go work out. At that point, I'd do whatever things I needed to do in the office. By about noon, I'd head down to Mesa, spend a couple hours there, train the girls in the gym, whatever it was going on at that point. And then I would either head to boys club or girls club, given what the night was.
Yeah.
And luckily, I had the understanding from both athletic directors, both GCU and at Mesa, that they understood what was going on. We saw that it could be a benefit for both programs, but also after being at GCU for 3 years, I was only gone for 1 season. I felt such a responsibility for this program, so I wanted to put the best products. And I also, before they even offered me the job, I was trying to get the best coach to come in here, because I was fine with my Mesa job. I was happy there.
Yeah.
It was definitely a different challenge and a different style of coaching, but it wasn't something that I was ready to leave. And then once I dove deeper through the spring with GCU, and GCU offered me the position, it was something that I couldn't turn down. To be 27 years old and a Division I men's volleyball coach was humbling, extremely humbling. But it was a challenge that I was ready to take.
Yeah.
And to be able to, I was not married at the time, no kids. I was able to devote a ton of time to the growth of this. And I've just had the best time doing it.
Yeah. So you're one of the few people that can actually answer this question. Difference between coaching men and women.
I think there's also 2 extremes to that question, because Division I men versus junior college women, 2 very different extremes. The guys, it's comforting to be in a gym and be able to not worry about a lot of the other things of, like, what am I saying? Where are my eyes? Where are my hands? Like, what do I look like, so I'm not giving off the wrong impression to a young college female? In the guys' gym, there's definitely a little bit more relaxation in that sense, but the style of coaching, and I guess, what I do in a practice gym, it's similar, but the guys need a little bit more like fast-paced, competitive style. Even in serving and passing, like, we gotta somehow find a way to create it to be competitive. And the girls can be a little bit slower, a little bit more technical. The guys want to go, kind of hang and bang and be physical. The girls want some low impacts and fine-tuned skills, maybe a little bit more descriptive teaching. The guys want, a message that could be sent in a text of, hey, do this, like something very quick hitter, and then hopefully they get it and move on. I think the way that high level women's volleyball is going, it's really comparable to men. I haven't been in a Division I women's gym in a long time to watch high level volleyball, but I would imagine it's very comparable, especially with what they're doing out of the back row. And there's some really physical college athletes out there on the women's side of the sport that are impressive to watch, and I think there's something that the guys can take from that, of what they're doing on a net that's lower, but from passing float serves on the women's net is way harder than passing float serves on the men's net. So.
Where have you gone personally in the last, since you took this job? Where have you been personally, as far as your own growth, not as a person, but more as a coach? Like what have you learned most in the last 4 or 5 years as a coach when you first started versus ending practice today?
I think I'm definitely a big picture thinker now. I was really worried about a lot of the wrong things and distractions and, hey, we have to win, like putting that kind of a little bit behind me and trying to get them to understand more process of what it's all about. And there's a group of alum that I still keep in pretty good touch with, but I was most recently asked, I've actually officiated 2 weddings. I was most recently asked to officiate one of the alums' weddings.
Oh, wow.
Coming up in October. And that's definitely something that I take to heart, that they still kind of start to see what I was trying to do even when I was a little bit younger. And there was a guy that I was buddies with through my graduate assistant years that his senior year really combated me. He didn't get a lot of playing time, and he was really tough to be around in the gym. I mean, we didn't get along, maybe 4 years of age separation, and he was just a jerk to me. And he most recently was back on campus, and he's apologized since, and he's a coach, and now he gets it. So I think that goes so far with me that, I knew that I was young and trying to find ways to win and trying to find ways to motivate, but it was definitely a little bit more probably aggressive than mindful. So I think I try to think a little bit more about how to get through to guys. My graduate degree is in business, but there's an emphasis in leadership, and the leadership courses are something that you use every day in coaching. We had a speaker, 5 or 6 years ago on campus, and it was from the company I think called Character Matters. And one of the things that they expressed was the way that you present yourself and on the sidelines of the court or field or whatever it is. Mm-hmm. You might not notice this, but your athletes will look at you and kind of see if you're fired up and angry and tense, they're going to be that. If you're kind of mellow and relaxed, they're going to reflect whatever you reflect subconsciously. So even when we're winning, definitely you could show a little bit more emotion and excitement and kind of get the speed of the game going. If we're losing, you can't act like an idiot and start screaming and yelling, because then things are just going to fall apart.
Right.
You have 6 big dudes and a 30 by 30 square on the court. There's no escaping each other, and there's no escaping me when I'm riding the sidelines. So I think I've been definitely a little bit more mild-mannered on the sidelines, a little bit more calm, and just trying to find what we need at a given time. And I think that's something that I'm trying to learn and still learning. And, watching some of these other great coaches, I was recruited, like I said, by Ken Shibuya, and I loved his mannerisms on the sideline. I absolutely loved it, and that's why I wanted to play for him. And now that's somebody that I also kind of try to model myself after.
Yeah. What's the one piece of advice that you today would give that coach 4 or 5 years ago when you started? Is there one piece of advice or a couple of things you'd say?
Try to build relationships, as opposed to using your power and fear and punishments. I think the relationships and having a team or a group of guys that want to play for you is something that is going to go far. I think you need to put yourself in a program where you respect the coach. You don't have to like him as long as you respect him, but also you have to want to play for him. You can't try to just go out there and just play and go through the motions and play for yourself. I think you need to try to play for the people around you. So making sure that as a coach, I make them want to be a part of this program. I want their, their well-being and why they're here to be something that they really enjoy, but also while challenging them and making them realize that, hey, I got something out of today and I got something out of my years at GCU.
Yeah. And I don't know if you realize it, but that literally just kind of mirrors your culture. Like what you had talked about your culture going from where it was to where it is now. It's exactly what you're talking about, I think.
You're good at these interviews. You're leading me. You're making me speak well.
Tell me about the state of boys volleyball and men's volleyball in this country right now. So boys club, boys high school.
Yeah, it's one of those sports that's growing. I think it's great that it's growing. It's still so spotty in terms of parts of the country. You, more than often than not, the type of athlete you're going to get based on the region that they're coming from.
Really? Yeah.
I think so. It's fun to have, a campaign of Motor MVB. They're definitely making a strong push, and the people involved. I mean, you have a guy like John Sparrow that's heavily involved in that, which is incredible. I think there's so many people out there that care so much about men's volleyball because they've been exposed to the people that are in it, whether it's an athlete or a coach. I mean, everyone that's involved in men's volleyball, they're a great person.
Yeah.
That's one of the reasons why I love this sport so much. Getting people that are not involved and not familiar with the sport is tough, and it's just a matter of finding ways to expose them to it, because once they're exposed to it, they love it. I mean, the buzz that's around men's volleyball during the Olympics is wild, but about 2 weeks thereafter, there's no talk, there's nothing of it. So my wife works corporate, and she was also a player, so they'll have the Olympics on in their office, and they'll watch, men's volleyball on TV during their workday, and they're like, wait, your husband coaches men's volleyball? That's cool. We want to come to a match. But by the time after the Summer Olympics are done and now our season comes the following spring, there's no talk or thought of it.
Right.
So it's tough. It's frustrating. I think GCU does a great job of playing the sport, making our environment in our gym awesome. We have a full band, a DJ, and cheerleaders at every match, and it's fun. I mean, once people come, they come back.
USA Volleyball, high school, what can we do more for the sport? Is it just starting programs, or is there other things we can do?
Yeah, it's tough because you start a program and then you have maybe somebody that's inexperienced running it. That's frustrating as an athlete too. So making sure that you have the right people starting the programs, I think is huge, because it's such a fun sport. And if these kids are being coached or taught by somebody that has the experience and has the right personality for it, most of the guys that are involved in men's volleyball are extremely quirky, but also very competitive. So how do you find that balance of, hey, this is fun, but we're also here to get the job done and get better and make the most of it. So I think it takes a special personality to coach men's, boys volleyball, high energy for the most part, and then also somebody that cares but knows their stuff, because athletes and kids are going to know very quickly that, hey, this coach isn't confident, he doesn't know what he's doing.
Yeah. There's a lot of players too that weren't necessarily boys volleyball players. They were basketball, or they were taken from other sports and stuff like that.
Yeah.
You still see that as a recruiting source for you, or are you more refining it to just club kids and high school kids?
Yeah, that's a tough one, because it is. I mean, basketball and volleyball are super relatable. We actually have one of our middles that played baseball and then had Tommy John surgery, and now he's like, one of his buddies in high school said, hey, you jump really well, you should come try out for volleyball, and he fell in love with the sport. I mean, he's a guy that's got a little time on the court as a freshman this year, but still, being a middle blocker and not understanding the flow of the game is tough. I think that we have a bunch of second outsides. Second outsides are guys that pass, play defense, control, but they're not super offensive, which, that's something that we're trying to train. But then we need to land that big athlete that can go terminate and find that special arm. There's teams out there right now that have one or two special offensive threats that are finding success, and everything else is very average. So trying to piece and puzzle together that right concoction of players. I think it was UCLA either last year or the year before that half of the roster came from a family of, like, one of their parents was a coach or played in college or something along those lines. So they're born and raised in the sport. I think that has a lot to do with it, but also it can be a sport that's learned if you're willing to really devote yourself to it, because there's a lot of great coaches out there that have never played.
Yeah. There's a camaraderie among the men's coaches that just isn't there at the women's side. You
Yeah.
know, I mean, I was literally listening to Sam Shusky the other day talking about how he stayed the night at the coach's house of the team he was playing the next day,
Sure.
and they were watching film together.
Sure.
That it's it from the women's side. That's weird. Like, people look at that and go,
Yes.
"That's really, really strange." But what is it? Why? You know, first of all, why, and second of all, what is it about the men's game that allows that?
Yeah, you know, it's definitely different. I mean, there's coaches out there that coached against me when I was a player. So there's definitely a different style of relationship there. But then there's also some really good young coaches coming up through the ranks that, you know, like to go out and have a good time. And that's not to say that, you know, they're going out partying and doing other things, but
Right.
like they'll go have dinner and just kind of talk about stuff. And they've played at adult nationals against each other on the same teams. I don't know. I mean, I think a lot of things, and that's one of the reasons everyone always asks me, like, what do you love about volleyball? I'm like, I just love the people that are involved. There's really not a coach out there that I, you know, don't respect or don't care to be around. I mean, everyone's good and everyone's very personable and they make time for each other, and you know, I think they just check in on how things are going. I mean, I think there's more of a, you know, well-being of, hey, we want to grow this together. But yeah, it's definitely it's extremely unique. It's definitely extremely unique.
Yeah, it's definitely it.
Yeah.
All right, last three questions.
Sure.
It's been a big part. First one is, what advice would you give to kids that want to play at this level?
You know, I think that varies very much at what age you are. But if you're young, getting into the sport, you just need to play it as much as possible. You know, go play sand, play grass, find a way to just play. You know, play pepper with a buddy, and just find a way to start learning how to, you know, manipulate and contact a ball. Get yourself exposed to as many coaches as possible through camps. I'm not a huge advocate for once you get into high school or club that you bounce from club to club. I don't think that's good. Hopefully that each year that you progress through that same club, I think that hopefully you have a good coach and a different coach, because like hearing a bunch of different voices, you know, something might click a year later, even though they're saying the same direction, it's just in a different fashion. I think that's important. But I think the biggest thing with this sport is you have to play and start to understand the movement and flow to it all.
Yeah.
Just be exposed and just play as much as possible.
All right, so what advice would you give parents?
Club obviously is expensive. I think there's other routes about it. I would say parents, just let your kids be exposed to it as much as possible. You know, I know we're the one Division I program in the States, but there's still Auto of Arizona, Benedictine, Arizona Christian. There's still other college programs out there. Go watch. You know, it might not be the most fun thing on a Friday night to go watch a match, and you might have other things to do as a family, but it's fun. It's a fun sport. It's exciting. I think getting kids excited about the sport is definitely the challenge that we're facing to grow. But to parents, I mean, if your kids, don't push them in one direction. Let them make the choice. But I think if they're exposed to volleyball, I think they'll fall in love with it.
Okay. And the last one is, what advice would you give to coaches going forward? Using all of your experience as a player, your experience, all the situations you've been in, what would you tell coaches?
You know, if there's this whole campaign of still growing, I think that we need to make it fun and we need to challenge, show them, expose them to the highest level. You know, once we get into the spring break of high school, we're going to try to have an open practice at some point, so players and coaches can come watch and kind of get them exposed to what it's all about and how fun it can be and how intense it can be, but also like how silly guys can be. You know, that's, a lot of people are driven into the ground by coaches and maybe even spending too much time in one sport. I say make sure that you find a balance of them wanting to be there and not ruining the sport for them, because kids are starting at the age of 10 and then playing all through college, they get burnt out. So, you know, for coaches to find some sort of balance of, you know, making it fun, enjoyable, but challenging them, because if they're challenged, they're going to want to come back and try to get better, hopefully.
Yeah. Okay. Listen, thank you for doing this. I appreciate it.